This is in breach of the recommendations of the Commission on Nursing, and we have now processed a claim to the LRC where there have been 2 hearings to date. And on the 8th of April, the LRC issued the following to the HSEA and the PNA. The LRC acknowledges that both parties have done considerable work in attempting to identify the extent and duration of acting up. However, in order to fully quantify this claim, the Commission is requesting further information. Accordingly, I am now recommending that the parties reconvene on Wednesday, 27th of May at 10:30 a.m. in the LRC, and as which it is hoped that agreement can be reached between both sides about the extent and the range of the problem and chart a way forward. Colleagues, today I am giving every branch final notice. Submit your list of actors now. We need the list of long-term actors, and I am including this anyone who is acting for more than 6 months, with full details of how long they are acting, how they were selected, and if the post is actually vacant, permanently vacant. After May 27th, if that list will have closed, it will be too late. Upgrading of nurses, replicating the role of clinical nurse specialists. A second claim relates to staff nurses whose role in practice replicates that of clinical nurse specialists. In the initial trial, we received 48 claims, more than half of which most certainly operate at CNS level. We went to HSEA on the 15th of January, and again it was decided to quantify the claim. As I travel around the branches, I meet more and more nurses who, at the very least, are entitled to have their positions examined with a view to upgrading. In recent weeks, I have met 4 whose names had not previously come to our attention. I cannot emphasise this point strongly enough. The questionnaires prepared by our research department must be completed and submitted to head office as soon as possible. In fact, we were due back last Tuesday. Late claims must reach head office not later than Friday, May 15th. After that, again, it will be too late, and I will be submitting the final list and the quantified claim to the HSEA on the week commencing the 18th of May. Authorised officers. The Mental Health Act 2001 provided for a more considered and family-friendly facility for the involuntary admission of patients who would not seek voluntary admission and whose family were reluctant or maybe fearful to make the application. Authorised officers would be put in place. Like everything in mental health, planning for this post was poor and inefficient. Initially, RPNs were omitted from the list of eligible persons who were deemed appropriate to carry out the role, but following representations by the PNA, this was sorted out or rectified. The concept of the authorised officer is excellent. A mental health professional who would use his or her knowledge and skills to assist a family in having a mentally ill loved one admitted to hospital, or to assist them alternatively in accessing the least restrictive service possible. The HSE established a management team to oversee the introduction of the service. However, it would appear that the approach was again dominated by the yellow pack philosophy to mental health care. Meetings with the HSEA were unsatisfactory. Go live was announced for March 16th, as if all outstanding issues had been resolved. On behalf of the union group, I had no choice but to issue an instruction for non-cooperation. And some of the outstanding issues include the coordination of the service out of hours, the refusal to recognise this as an on-call service, as opposed to one provided on an availability list. Can you imagine anyone declaring themselves available over a bank holiday weekend, unable to socialise or take a drink, and only paid anything if actually called out, and then paid €300 before tax and levies for what might be a 6 or 8 hour function? The authorised officer must identify the least restrictive service possible, and if the choice made is admission to an acute unit, must defend that decision before an upcoming mental health tribunal. If the choice is other than admission, the AO needs to be guaranteed that the choice made will actually be available in the morning from the broader mental health team, including access to emergency day hospital or consultant appointments in the following morning. Since many of these applications will occur out of hours and the AO is in fact a lone worker, there are obvious health and safety issues which need to be addressed. I am not aware of any other state agency which requires their staff to work alone in these situations. Other issues relate to access to clinical supervision, time off in lieu, data and record storage, consistency of approach, access to office equipment out of hours, etc. And the issue of fees awaits a hearing at the LRC. The current position is that the Mental Health Commission envisages a guaranteed 24-hour service for the public. Families expect a service to be available when they want it, but the HSE wants the cheapest option. A meeting is arranged for next Monday morning in the HSE. Escorts or assisted admissions. Just getting the water organised. Following the assault and serious injury to 3 nurses in Artane in 1994, the PNA put a ban on the compulsory escorting of patients to hospital in pursuit of appropriate safeguards for our members and a compensation scheme for those injured in the course of their work. After extensive campaigns and eventual industrial action, various facets of a compensation scheme have now been agreed and are being implemented. Safety and procedural guidelines recommended at the time obviously need to be upgraded. Management have now invited us to a meeting next week on the 30th of April to examine the matters related to our return to doing escorts or admissions on assisted admissions nationwide. In the western half of the country, nurses have never been involved in the escorting of new admissions to hospital. In much of the remainder of the country, nurses have not been involved in escorts for years. Training is therefore essential to prepare our staff for this most challenging of roles, which requires great sensitivity, significant psychological intervention skills, and appropriate competencies in the management of aggression and violence. And the current system, since November 2006, is a combination of private sector services set to cost €2 million annually and some provision by HSE nurses. Moving to a single system would generate significant savings for the HSE. These savings must not be pocketed, but used to relieve other pressures on nurses in mental health. Now, the environment in which psychiatric nursing is practiced in acute admission units has significantly changed over the last 15 years. With beds have been reduced, nursing numbers pared to the minimum, acuity levels increased as only those who cannot be cared for in the community are admitted. We are still charged with the care of children, as government have still not managed to provide the necessary recommended specialist facilities for their care. On a daily basis, nurses on sick leave and other kinds of leave are not replaced. And against this background, the provision of escorts or assisted admissions as a core role of existing staff would be virtually impossible. Fees currently paid to off-duty staff need to be reviewed in light of the experiences of those who have been doing escorts since 2006. While €250 before tax may have seemed attractive when first introduced, and particularly when the admission was non-eventful, it would hardly attract many volunteers in the current high-tax, levy-heavy environment. And the coordination of assisted admissions has fallen to the Assistant Director of Nursing without any discussion, preparation or provision. And this has proven particularly challenging in environments where there are no ADNs on duty after 8 p.m. in the evening, or earlier in some cases. A turn now, colleagues, to supervision orders or community care orders. The issue of non-compliance has been a challenge for the mental health services throughout the world for many years. Patients very often stop taking their medication because either they feel well and believe they have recovered and don't need medication any longer, or they listen to someone on the radio preaching the anti-drug philosophy, or are alternatively convinced by the argument that all they need for their recovery is a good friend with whom they can talk. Other cases, they're upset by the side effects or by a combination of these and other symptoms. And the net effect of non-compliance is often relapse and readmission. Sometimes the implications are far